Welcome, everyone. We're happy to be here this morning, and we're happy that everyone has arrived. I'm assuming that Natalie is going to be online.
Yep, she's ready to go.
Is she there? Okay, let's see. I can see some little people up there. Quite a few little people.
And we have a big group of recognition online today. So
Terrific. Well, that's great. Well, welcome to everyone online and everyone that made the effort to brave the traffic and be here this morning. Those that stayed last night late and enjoyed a nice long meeting. And here we are again. At least we didn't have the 8 o'clock session that long licensing had. So we were the lucky ones a little bit later. We're happy to be here today, and we're going to begin by turning some time over to Deputy Superintendent Patty Norman for some recognition of some of the really good things that are happening. Yes.
Thank you. So I'm Patty Norman, Deputy Superintendent of Student Achievement, and I love starting the meetings this way because it focuses on the board's vision and mission and then how staff support attainment of the vision and mission. So the Utah State Board of Education is committed to the vision of upon completion, all Utah students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and meaningful lives. To accomplish these goals, staff of the board are engaged in supporting the everyday work to achieve this goal and assisting the board to create equitable conditions for student success, advocating for necessary resources, and developing policy and providing effective oversight and support. So this month, we're going to highlight 2 different areas. The first of these areas is our adult education. And so this is our adult education folks right up here. Naming them off, we have Stephanie Patton, who is the adult education coordinator, Danielle Peterson, adult education specialist, Alex Ellerman, program specialist, and Adam Little, IT analyst, and Brian's executive secretary for our adult education programs. And so let me tell you what it is that we're on the meeting for. So the attached infographic, which is displayed right now, and it is being displayed via Zoom as well, illustrates the outcome increases that Utah adult education has experienced over the past 2 years. A couple of years ago, USBE adult education staff noticed that retention of adult education students was an issue. At that point, a statewide initiative was created to address the issue titled Make It Personal. 3 statewide goals were associated with the initiative, including increased personal contact, increased personal feedback, and set personalized expectations. At that point, 44.92% of students left the program before 12 hours. And on average, students stayed in the program only 55.38 hours per year. Since then, Utah adult education has decreased the percentage of students leaving before 12 hours to only 31.45% and increased the average number of hours attended per year to 72.85. As expected, measurable skills gains, MSGs, such as diplomas and academic level gains, increased from 36.5% to 42.2%. Post-testing rates have also increased from 44.7% to 55.4%, and the credential attainment rate doubled from 10.88 to over 20%. All these occurred while student enrollment was also increasing from a low in 2020 at 9,942 because of the pandemic to 13,578 in 22 and 23. So it just goes to show that what you focus on, having dedicated individuals there to be able to do the work of the board really matters. So let's give a hand. I don't know, Stephanie, if you want to say anything about it.
I'm privileged to work with a lot of really dedicated program directors across the state and a staff team that works really hard to do it. And we're proud of where we're going. We're headed in the right direction. A lot of work's still to be done, but we're going in the right direction. So that's the question.
How many, does every district have one person? Do some districts have many people? Or do they all have at least one? I guess maybe that's my question.
Not quite every district has one. Morgan and Rich combined. Murray actually works with Granite to have that area covered, and Logan and Cash work together Garfield, Lane, and Paiute have one that goes throughout the three.
Okay, so they
But-
just kind of share that position?
Yeah, but then like it depends. So Granite's program actually serves over 3,000 students a year. So that's much more than one
Right.
person, right? Similarly, like Davis and Jordan, Salt Lake have over 1,000 about.
So how many around the state would you say we have that you work with?
We have 563 staff members right now.
Wow.
A lot of them are part-time too.
And those aren't all directors, so those would be the people helping underneath, yeah.
I have a question as well. Well, great work here. How much of the emphasis or how much need are you seeing in ELL?
It's totally increasing. In fact, we have a lot of wait lists right now. We just don't have enough resources to serve all of the students who are in need or desiring additional, but yeah. So in the past, it's been about 40% of our program were ELL students versus diploma students. Now it's coming closer to 50%, and I anticipate that we'll actually increase and have more ELL than diploma soon.
Good job.
When I think about this adult population and how valuable this investment of your time and the 500 plus that are working out in the field, what rewards we're going to reap from these students who could very easily not complete because they're not at a time of life when that's just what you normally do. But to have that kind of success rate and that kind of improvement is phenomenal. And I know that our state leaders are going to be thrilled to see those numbers. We've got to get that word up to the governor's office and let people know that we are committed to every student, no matter where they are and whatever their circumstances. We've got a host of students in just our regular school system, but to think of 13,000 lives and their current and future families' lives that are going to be impacted in such a positive way because they're able to complete their education is really terrific. So congratulations and keep it up. We're rooting for you. It's just terrific.
Well, starting out maybe this is best. The second group we have is quite a large group. We have some here and we have a good portion online. So I'm going to tell you who they are first. So you can see their faces as we're recognizing them. This was a very big initiative and it goes along with one of the board's goals. And we're recognizing, first of all, educator licensing. And I'm going to start by saying education, learning, and teacher retention. So we're going to be talking about that. But this is the number of staff that have been involved in this. So I'm going to just show you the list first, and then I'm going to name them off. So we have Malia Hyde, Lori Anderson, Evan Barry. Just turn your camera on and give us a wave when we say your name. So that was Evan Baird, Christine Benevento, Kristen Campbell, Camilla Capella, Megan Carlisle, Jane Conway, Greg Cox, Debbie Fuchs, Andrew Grove, Riley Haig, Erica Horsley, Dejana Karabajovic, Lisa McLaughlin, Lorraine Peterson, Jennifer Prince, Stephanie Smith, Greg Swap, Mercedes Ushak, Brittany Taylor, and we would also like to recognize the collaboration that's occurred with Apple SPED and the SLT team, which is Kim Fratto, Kathy Webb, Jennifer Mortensen, Sydney Seeger, Ashley Hines, Maria Hawley, Elizabeth Payne, Bonnie Smith, and Sabrina Gill. So when you wonder what staff is doing, this isn't all like full-time for what all of these people are doing, but you can see the collaborative efforts across the agency, within the agency, and also what people do full-time. So this is what they've accomplished for your strategic goal. Currently, 92.5% of Utah educators hold a professional educator's license, which means they have completed all preparation and licensing requirements. The balance of Utah educators is either an associate or LEA-specific license and are actively working to demonstrate competencies for a professional license. Nearly 10% of our professionally licensed educators are extending their training by working toward additional content area endorsements, teaching in those content areas while they demonstrate competencies for the professional endorsement. The alternate preparation programs, Apple and Apple Sped, support over 2,000 educators working towards their professional licensure. The USBE Special Education licensing team collaborates bi-weekly with the educator licensing team to provide a concierge model of service to more than 600 educators in Apple Sped, working toward professional licensure in special education, preschool special education, and speech language technician. Teachers who have completed their preparation and hold a professional license have better student outcomes and more growth in student learning. I'm going to read that one more time because we get asked this all of the time by the legislature and by our stakeholders. Teachers who have completed their preparation and hold a professional license have better student outcomes and more growth in student learning in all grades and content areas. Teachers with a professional license are more than 30% more effective in helping students be academically proficient. For students from low-income families, the impact is even more pronounced. Teachers with a professional license are 58% more effective in helping students from low-income circumstances to be proficient in mathematics. After 5 years, Utah loses twice as many educators without a professional license compared to those with a professional license. It's a lot of number work just to get to that. We are grateful for all who support educators in completing their preparation and licensing requirements. Their efforts, all the folks that you saw there and on this list that we have that weren't able to show up today, their efforts will support greater retention of Utah teacher and promote greater academic success for Utah students. And we're going to have Malia Height, who is a coordinator in our licensing, her official title, executive coordinator, yes, is going to give you just a little bit more information on what this looks like. Malia?
Hi, good morning. I'm so glad to be with you virtually this morning to share a little bit about the impact that educator licensing has on the educational ecosystem and particularly our students. So Deputy Norman mentioned the 3 different license levels that educators can earn here in Utah, and it's professional, associate, and LEA, or local education agency specific. And the professional is for those who have completed all of their preparation activities. The associate is for those who have completed some of them and are working towards demonstrating the balance of those competencies. And the LEA specific licensees are awarded such a license under the governing board of their employer. They typically are educators who've not yet met the associate requirements. And so this is, I have 3 very short slides that will show graphically the impact that these license levels have on students and teacher retention. The first is showing the academic proficiency, and this was from the last school year for which we have data. All students are the first 3 bins on the left, and you can see that the professional level, teachers with a professional level license have the greatest level of proficiency in all content areas. And then as we go to the associate level and then the LEA specific level, we see that the academic proficiency of their students are less. And then on the right, those 3 bins are for students coming from low-income families. And we can just see that those students oftentimes have other challenges that they are tackling. And our teachers who've completed their preparation and have a professional license are far more effective in helping those students to become academically proficient. And so this is why we do our work. This is why this giant team of amazing professionals work so hard to support educators in obtaining their licensure, because we know that it matters and it impacts our students. The other thing that it impacts is teacher retention. As we looked at one cohort of teachers starting in the 17-18 school year and have looked at the following 4 years. So this is a 5-year range. And we can see that the professional licensees, which are those, that's the pink bar, those educators, we retain more of them. And we know that that is because they've completed their preparation and they're ready to go, and they know what to expect and are ready to tackle the challenges and the duties of a very rigorous and demanding and important job. So we know that if we can help educators to become professionally licensed and demonstrate all of the knowledge and skills that they need to have such a license, they will have a much greater longevity in the field of teaching. One of the other things that I just added this as just so that we can maybe understand the space that Utah is in compared to other states with respect to teacher shortages. We hear all over the national news that there's this dire teacher shortage nationwide. And it, yes, is impacting Utah, but it is not impacting Utah at the same level as some of our neighboring states. In fact, almost all of our neighboring states have greater challenges. And so the blue bar is the total number of teachers in each of these states. The golden color is how many have a professional license, a professional level license, have completed all of their preparation. And then the pink bar, for which Utah is a teeny tiny sliver of a line, is the number of teacher vacancies statewide. So the number of classrooms where LEAs were unable to find a teacher to put into the classroom and be a licensed teacher at one of those three levels. So those are just kind of some very brief overview and the impact and kind of the landscape of educator licensing in Utah. I'm just so pleased and honored to lead such a great group of people who are dedicated to helping educators and schools provide excellent teachers for their students. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
How do you do it? I mean, it's amazing that we have that many teachers that are prepared, that have completed their professional licensure, and who are in the classroom doing the work that they need to be doing. I'm just looking at a couple of the other states there. Congratulations on helping our educators complete that preparation and find the best way for each individual educator to get themselves ready for the classroom, because it's benefiting our students in big ways. We certainly appreciate all of the work that you're doing, Malia, and the list that Deputy Norman read. It's kind of amazing to think about how many people are involved in this process of supporting our educators across the state of Utah. And we just want to express our thanks to you for helping us retain our teachers, because yeah, we do worry about that, and we're grateful that we have to worry less because you're doing the excellent work that you're doing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I think a lot of the reason we have fewer retention and licensing and shortage issues in Utah is due to the board's direction of going to a competency-based licensing model 3.5 years ago. And it really has opened up a lot of pathways and flexibility for educators to demonstrate their competency so that they can finish their preparation, which is really great.
I was going to say, I think it speaks to flexibility as well as like the grow your own and some other things where we're able to fill those gaps and then help people move into more professional licenses as they go along. So I think it speaks to Utah prioritizing the needs in areas and meeting those needs of those people in the areas too, as well as the other things. So thank you.
We don't want to tell the other states too much about our success because we don't want to lose any of you. So stay right here, keep doing the job you're doing, and we'll all be happy. Thank you very much for your excellent work. We're grateful and proud of you.
So as staff, we'd like to thank the board, and like to thank the members of this committee for the goals that you put forward and being able to provide the support necessary financially with people, with resources, and the legislature at the same time, supporting those and prioritizing those goals like Grow Your Own, so that we have the ability to move forward in these areas. Really, you're talking about the personalization of adult education, talking about effective educators and leaders, all those amazing faces right there that are able to come to work daily on behalf of the board. So thank you.
And especially to be here this early in the morning, when I know you have many other things to do, because we just heard all that you're accomplishing. So we better let you get at it. Thanks so much for joining. All right, do we have any public comment, Andrea?
I didn't, unless somebody signed up that has joined us, then I don't think we do.
Okay, well, great. We can move right along then with item 2.3, which is the information item. And we've got Superintendent Norman and Leah, who are undertaking CTE standard revision and implementation process.
So do you want to log this in so now we can
So,
see? I'm sorry.
I'll go ahead and start this out, which is, we have in November about 60 CTE standards that are going to be coming through for updating. And so what we wanted to be able to do is provide some background information about what that process looks like in the CTE standards revision process, to answer any questions from our committee members and from the board as they all listen to this completely, and be able to have that broad perspective and that head start, so that we know as your staff how we can help facilitate best what that looks like, reviewing so many standards at one time. So Talia is going to talk about what that looks like and answer any questions that you have first. So Talia and Jonathan.
Give me just 1 second. Of course, this is the morning my computer had to restart and all my windows went away, and now I have to reload soon. So just 1 second, please.
Technical difficulty. Maybe during this time, if I can take a personal prerogative and introduce, you guys all have met Michelle Hughes before, and she is supporting our 3D standards assessment. So thank you.
God bless it. To have somebody with her expertise, but with her experience with USBE, and you'll come back. You knew what you were getting into.
I really had a good day yesterday.
Great. I'm so glad you're back. Thank you.
Do I need to log in here or just in Zoom to show them?
Just in Zoom, and then I'll make you a co-host so you can share.
That's it.
Jump on.
Sure.
That was great. Of course.
It was Teams more than Zoom. Okay, there we go.
Awesome.
The other disability that I'm running into this morning is I put my Apple Watch on the charger this morning, so it would be all nice and charged up for the day, and then I left home without it. I have worn a watch since I was about 2 years old, so I am today watchless, which throws me off completely. Can't tell you how many times I've texted this morning. What time is it? Thanks for having us come this morning. My name is Talia Longhurst. I'm the Director of Career and Technical Education here at USBE. With me today is Jonathan Fry. Jonathan is one of our wonderful CTE coordinators, and we're pleased to be here to talk to you a little bit about career and technical education today, and what we're about and how our processes work. So I wanted to start with, I'm always amazed what you can see on the screen versus what I see on my screen. What I wanted to start with today is what the board is statutorily required to do with regards to career and technical education. So in 53F to 311, the board is required to establish rules for upgrading high school CTE programs. Those rules shall reflect career and technical training and actual marketable job skills in society. Those rules should include procedures to assist LEAs to convert existing programs that are not preparing students for the job market into programs that will accomplish that purpose. And we are required to not fund programs that don't meet state board standards. So that is verbatim out of state law, what your role is with regard to CT. There we go. I wanted to highlight the difference. There's a lot of similarities between CT courses and core courses, but I also wanted to help you understand what the differences are. The core content areas, which is how we refer to them, are language arts, math, science, social studies, fine arts, driver's ed, health, PE, and world languages. Those are what we call core courses, core programs here in Utah. In R27700, CTE is defined as applied courses, courses that apply the concepts of those core subjects. And if you've ever taken or been in a CTE classroom, you see that in practice every day. I think math, I'll tell a story on myself here in a second. I think math, for example, means a whole lot more when you actually see how you apply it in the real world. Not that our math teachers aren't doing that, but CTE teachers can do it in a very unique way. My personal background is in health sciences. I came from industry into a classroom many years ago. And it was back in a time when we didn't have the pedagogy classes that we have today for our industry folks or people coming into education. I learned a lot in on-the-job training and just figuring it out as I went. And I remember standing in front of my class one day, teaching them, we were trying to teach them about goniometers. A star for anyone here who knows what a goniometer is. Anyone? Goniometer is the device that you use to measure joint angles so that when you injure a joint, you can get it back to its normal range of motion, both flexion and extension. And so I was using a goniometer, we were talking about it, angles, the whole bit, and the kids just stared at me like, what in the world is she talking about? So I got on the board and I drew the angles and math, and we were talking about math, and all of a sudden I literally stood there and went, oh my gosh, I don't think I'm supposed to teach you math. That literally came out of my mouth because I didn't want to break them, right? I didn't want to say something that their math teacher wouldn't have supported. And I felt really awkward. And then I realized after the fact that that actually was my job, to teach them how to apply math concepts in the real world. And we spent a lot of time after that talking about all kinds of math things. Today, in fact, we have a course in our health science pathways that, in partnership with our friends over in Teaching and Learning, is a medical math course, and it can actually provide graduation credit for third-year math for students who are interested in that. So we've come a long way since I first started and felt incredibly awkward about teaching math in my CTE class. It's a whole different world out there, but that is the point, to take the core concepts that kids are learning in their wonderful core classes and apply it to everyday life. I think about construction, the pitch of a roof, our family and consumer sciences classes. One of the first things I taught my boys when they were little, let's get in and cook. We're going to make cookies and we're going to double the recipe. Let's double the fractions, right? You've got a third of a cup. What does that mean? Or instead of measuring using the 1 cup measure, we're going to use the 1/3 cup. So how many do we have to have now? It's that application. The other thing that Board Rule R277-700 highlights is that in high school, there is a 1.0 credit requirement for graduation in career and technical education. So those are the things that we know, right? Core classes, CTE classes. I want to highlight a little bit more about what are those CTE classes. Yesterday in consent calendar, you approved the school year 24-25 pathways. All of our CTE programs are organized, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but they're organized by pathways. And I wanted to highlight, rather than going through the entire list of 280 some classes that we have in CTE, I'm just going to lump them together by our clusters and our pathways. So, and I won't even take the time to read all of them, but you can look down this list and see and imagine that within these pathways, ag mechanics, ag production, broadcast and digital media, fashion, apparel, and textiles, all of those have sequences of classes in them that are designed to help students who are interested in those programs move along their career path. These are the middle group: computer science, IT, of course, the ever popular, my personal favorite, don't tell anyone I said that, health sciences. They're all wonderful. Board member Hart was giving me a hard time yesterday because I told her donuts had protein in them, and I was joking. She's like, I can't believe my background is sports medicine, not.
I'm very sure
Not- what-
That's on my date yet.
Exactly, that's what that is what I was thinking.
Where it's applied, right?
That's right. Love a good piece of it. Anyway, so you can see these pathways, and when we jumped next to talk about the courses, all of our courses, those 280 some courses, are organized into those pathways. And they're sequenced from exploratory to foundation building to skill building, and then aligned with post-secondary education and with our industry partners to make sure that we're teaching students age-appropriate, developmentally appropriate standards that lead directly to post-secondary education, that lead directly to industry. And ultimately to industry credentials of value, whatever that looks like for a particular industry. And as you might expect, it looks very different from one industry to the next. We have many programs in Utah that are directly connected to a license or a certification. And it's very clear and very specific as to what has to be taught in order for the student to be ready to sit for that certification or licensure. Again, I always revert back to my health science world. Let's use, for example, nurse assisting. Students in high school can easily take part in education and training to prepare them to sit for the Utah Nurse Assistant Registry exam. It's both a written test and a practical test. They have to have a certain number of hours of seat time plus some clinical experience, and then they can sit for that. And once they pass those exams, they are then ready to go out into the world of work and work as a nurse assistant. Many of them, most of them, that is not their end-all career, although it could be for those who choose to do that. But usually it is a step onto the next thing that they want to do, whether that is nursing school or many other careers that they can choose from. But it does help prepare them, but they have to have a specific set of standards in order to be prepared to license. The other thing, and I alluded to this a minute ago, was about core graduation requirements. Many, many years ago, the board put into place a process whereby teaching and learning and CTE sit down together, and we have a list, and I'll pull that up really quickly to show you. Here we go. Current courses meeting criteria for graduation requirement for language arts, mathematics, social studies, and science. Most of our CTE courses are currently in the science realm, but they could count for that third science credit, a third math credit, some language arts credit. I don't think we currently have any in social studies. But you can see anything, let me make that a little bit bigger, anything with an asterisk next to it, a double asterisk, single asterisk is a CTE course. And we regularly talk back and forth with teaching and learning about, are there new courses that we've added that should go onto that list? Are there courses whose standards have changed enough that maybe it needs to come off the list? We're adding a new one effective this year. I think we're piloting called data science with math. And that one will go onto the list as it moves forward. So students often are then able to earn additional graduation credit through a CTE course. This is just a flow chart designed to kind of show you the flow of the board approved course revision process that we have. So we start with our calendar, first of all, which is in backup documentation for you. And that calendar is ever so slightly flexible based on the needs of industry, but we try to hold to that fairly steadily. And every year, the program specialist will start looking at those courses, and they will convene a committee to review the standards. They take input from many different sources, and we'll highlight that in just a second. A writing committee comes together, revises based on the input they received, and then we come to the board to committee in November with our standards and ask for your approval to send it to full board for approval in December. And then I'll talk about what happens after that process in a second. But we are on a 3 to 4 year calendar cycle because we know it's not, are they ready to be revised? We know they generally are revised. I gave Patty an example the other day. Again, my background in healthcare. We have a course called Medical Anatomy and Physiology. And I always laugh because you would look at that and think, well, you know, we haven't really discovered any new bones or muscles in the human body for a few years. So do we really need to update that course? And the answer is yes, we do. Yes, we didn't find any new bones or muscles, but a lot of things do change. New diseases come into play that we want to talk about. There are a lot of advancements, things that we want to update to make sure that students are prepared with that foundational knowledge as they move into their skill building courses. Our specialists work very closely with higher education, with our industry partners through a myriad of advisory committees that they sit on or convene themselves, and with teachers as they begin to work with their writing teams to do this. We also have at our fingertips a tool through one of our vendors, our contractors that we work very closely with. It's called an industry standard rating tool, although it is open to all. I actually want to talk to you about changing the title of it. That is available 24/7, 365 for anyone who wants to go in and take a look at the standards of any one of our courses and provide feedback. Our writing teams very specifically and intentionally represent rural and urban LEAs from all across the state. Our specialists work really hard to make sure that folks from all over the state represent on those writing teams. Once you all approve our standards in the fall and early winter, what our team does from there is they go out and bring in new teams to write assessment questions. We have a program called our Skills Certificate program that are tied directly to standards. So now they have to readjust all of our test items to make sure that they align directly to the standards that you approve, and then professional learning opportunities to ensure that teachers have the most up-to-date information. The standards that you approve in November and December won't actually go into effect until July 1 of the next year. So it's a year out from there, or half a year, before those are actually effective. So as our teams work to write in the spring and summer, then they come to you in the fall. We continue working on them in terms of assessments, in terms of professional learning, giving teachers time over the summer to develop new lesson plans so that they're then ready to implement the next fall. So that gives you a little idea of time frame, how it all works together. I am happy to take any questions.
I have a question, please. So this is probably a silly question, but whatever, I tell my students that they can ask all the silly questions, so I'm going to. A lot of these courses, if they do kind of go into a CTE track in high school, they are technically getting the certificate by passing the exam, right? At the end of some of these. Is that possible? Okay. So in a lot of ways, in my brain, it looks like it feels like it's almost like concurrent enrollment, but for tech, right? Would that be a good analogy?
I think so.
Because if not, say they decide they realize they really like machining, right? Or aviation maintenance, right? Those are tech college programs, but if they pass the certificate, they're getting similar instruction in high school if they're on that track than what they would get at a tech college.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's that alignment. And we are continuing to work. There's a new emphasis by higher ed in helping to make sure that alignment is in place. We've always looked at it from our perspective, but now higher ed has prioritized that, looking back at us to say, are we all aligned? We look up to make sure we're aligned from our work, but now they're looking down to say, are we aligned with what high schools are doing?
Are they based on clock hours?
For higher ed?
No, so like, is the instruction similar? They're getting similar instruction to complete that certificate examination at the end, right? But it's not clock hour type
Some
It's standard.
industry certificates or licenses are still based on clock hours. They haven't made a switch to competency. Nurse assisting, trying to think of some of the others. Cosmetology is still, that's a great example, it's still a clock hour.
Okay.
I think you'll see industry shift down the road, hopefully in my lifetime, but
Department of Commerce is working on that right now.
Yeah. A lot of the tech colleges are shifting from clock hour to credit based now, and so I think that's interesting.
But there will be some that you'll have to have the hours, right? I mean, that's what you're saying, because without it's not just a matter of, it's a matter of experience as much as it is the content knowledge.
well, but then that goes back to competencies. If you're competent, I'm not sure that we can argue much longer that seat time is the requirement. If you're competent and you
Right, I
can have
just
seat time.
Some of those would be, there is a balance in it, right? I'm thinking of aviation, I'm thinking of, there's certain things that you really can't say, oh, you can do that on a simulator, so therefore, right, you do have to have some time, right? Displaying the competency, but there still is an element of time to some of those.
Yeah.
Apprenticeship programs,
Yeah.
electrician.
Yep, exactly.
Maybe the superintendent can help me wrap my head around this. I'm trying to think of the big picture because I feel like and I'm excited to go through these standards, although the list is very long. But then I saw that there's a bicycle maintenance one, and I was really upset that I didn't get to take that in high school. The emphasis from the state seems to be about tech and CTE, right? It seems like they're really leaning towards like helping push more, growing our student population that take a CTE or tech track rather than an associate's bachelor's, right, track. They're trying to shift that emphasis. And so how do we fit in, like, how does our CTE courses fit in with the bigger picture with all the tech colleges in the state?
That's a great question. I'll take a stab and then Talika to do mine too. I sit on the Economic Development Commission, and they've been having this conversation a lot. And for as long as I can remember, about 80% of the jobs are CTE tech related. And now by tech, we have a different way of framing tech. But they've been in that non-bachelor degree industry for many, many years. We are a state who has a lower rate of bachelor completion, I think in part because we have this mentality that you're less than if you don't complete a 4-year degree. And we have fought that perception for so many years. And I just remember as a counselor trying to get kids into some of these pathways that would be more profitable for them and raising their families and contributing. And yet parents were driving them to that bachelor. So we've sort of got this mentality that's still on. And I don't know that industry has changed all that much in terms of the number of jobs in society that are in this space, but people are catching on. Yesterday, 2 days ago, when Dr. Norman and I were at Career Path Highway, I am so tired, Career Path High, and there was a highway in front of Career Path. And the students, I went into this place where you had kids that were waiting to catch a bus to go to a construction site where they were building tiny homes. You had students who were learning to be plumbers, and then you had electricians and composite manufacturing, and there was one other thing, and they were all sort of auto, and they were all there together, but really concentrated on their skills. So all of these students will walk away with a basic certificate through being able to show, to Board Member Earl's point, that it's not just about the clock time, but being able to show it pass off, that they can do the right bead in welding or the right fitting on a pipe or whatever it is. And what do we all value when something goes wrong? We want our plumbers, our electricians, we want homes to be built well. We want somebody who can care for us in the medical industry, and on and on and on. So we talked to kids that were going into cybersecurity and a lot of these kids, for some reason, just were struggling, and what they were telling us was regular school. So trying to help kids see that part of regular school is finding these durable skills that they can be in one pathway and learn the skills that Talia was talking about and look to another. Because that's the generations that are rising. They've got to have those durable skills. And I'll just end by saying that Dr. Norman and I were in a meeting this summer in Vermont, and I was shocked to hear that people don't require CTE for graduation. And I looked at Patty and said, wait, I thought everyone did. So I hurried and sent a text to Talia and said, Talia, don't other states require CTE for graduation? No, because you hear all of these states, like they're just trying to rally to your point. How do we get kids more interested in CTE? We're having a hard time because they're in this bachelor mode. And yet, not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's about the stackable credentials. How do you get these first credentials? And then you can add up on those all the way to, K-16 and beyond. So really helping kids understand it's a yes and I think that's where we have an advantage in our state because we have a board who values CTE and we have industries who work directly with us so that you see this shifting going on yearly with industry to say, hey, Talia and gang, we need you to teach this skill now in your course because this is how industry is shifting. And we're really unique as a state that way. I had no idea. I just thought everybody did what we did.
But there is this, I go to work every day thinking, how do I get more students enrolled in tech programs, right? Because that's like a big part of what I do in my job. And had an interesting conversation with the provost who was talking about this idea that now with the stackable credentials and or with technical programs, that students could, let's say they go into aviation maintenance or diesel technology or something like that. They start as a diesel tech, they get into a management position, and then they want to then go get their bachelor's in business because now they're doing management or get an MBA, right? And the idea is that you can start in these technical programs, but they're trying to align it in a way that will transfer with credit base into a bachelor's and into a master's even. So the idea is like start with a tech degree and get a doctorate. Like you could go all the way up, right? So is there a disconnect though between the work that you guys are doing that's so great here and our technical colleges? It feels like there might be more opportunity for partnerships, and that's something that we can talk about later. We don't have to talk about it now, but I think that's a really interesting, because if K through 12 is offering the same thing that technical colleges are offering, are we battling each other, or is there a way to be more connected and supported, especially with like a lot of the resources we have at the technical colleges with like, simulators and these really cool workshops that maybe a lot of
So are you
high schools
saying
don't have.
don't duplicate?
It
Take
feels like
advantage
we're
of the
duplicating.
resources
Yeah.
that we have?
Yes, basically it feels like we're duplicating.
Well, CT directors, yeah.
Hold on.
Well, and
Natalie-
And Natalie Klein has her hand up too, so we need to respect that also.
So to answer that question, among many other answers that we can give you, back, 8 or 9 years ago or so, the legislative auditors actually did an audit to that end. Are we duplicating work in high school and in the tech colleges and in higher ed? And the answer is no. The answer is that we work very closely together in some areas of our state, and I'll pick on maybe Uinta and Duchesne school districts. They actually have technical colleges literally across the street from their high schools. And instead of offering high-end classes at their high schools, they just have the students walk across the street and take courses at the tech college. In areas like the Wasatch Front, where we don't have a technical college other than Salt Lake Community College, which isn't convenient for many students to get to in the middle of the school day. We have bigger programs at the schools. They have more students. They can afford to build technical centers of their own and offer those high-end programs. And then when they don't have something or the student needs to move on, they partner very closely with Salt Lake Community College to send those students on. And everything in between. But the legislative auditors, and it's only improved since then, only could identify 2 instances where they felt like there was some duplication that could have been avoided, and those have been remedied since that day.
But if I could add to that, we did have an issue with pathways. So we had our governor who was very focused on pathways and would just establish through the economic development opportunities. Here's a pathway, and then we had pathways, and then higher ed had pathways. So we all had to get together and say, it's too confusing. We can't have all these different pathways. Let's streamline them. So we've been doing some really great work with Talent Ready Utah. They have taken on the ownership of trying to streamline the pathway. So when we say there is a medical pathway, that everybody's aligned. So the course numbers, everything's getting aligned, and Talia's been right in the middle of that.
When I was the chairman of the board of directors for MTech, I served on that board of directors for about 16 years. In the beginning years, there was a lot more duplication. But I'd say that as soon as Clay Christensen came from his high school background and took over, as president of MTech, every effort was made to really not duplicate, but to take advantage of what could be offered in each location. And I know MTech has in Nebo district, it's a lot of, and Alpine as well, a lot of sharing but in terms of what the students can access, this is such an incredible opportunity. And I think our higher ed technical facilities and institutions in the state are very eager to be partners and to going both ways, whether they're preparing nursing students to go on to Weaver's nursing program, or whether they're, working with the high school to get a kid certified in welding or whatever. I just think that there's just every effort being made to make it easier, more convenient for the student to accomplish what they want to accomplish. One fun example, I taught at BYU for 43 years, and we prepared a lot of really fine musicians. I would say the most outstanding tenor vocalist that I ever saw in those 43 years was a young man by the name of Solomon Reynolds. And he could sing like unbelievable. And he finished his bachelor's at BYU, and of course went to Indiana, which is basically the school in the country for grad programs in opera. There's no other school that even comes close to what they have done historically and the people who have gone onto the mat and everything. So he goes there. It's very expensive. It's a very expensive school. He got a scholarship, but it was still very expensive for him. So he finishes his master's degree. So now he has a lovely master's degree. Before he ever started the program at BYU in his bachelor's program, he could sing better than a lot of graduates that came out of Indiana 6 years later. So now he does have a master's degree. He has a bachelor's degree. He's still an incredible singer, and I'm sure that they contributed somewhat to that. But what does he do now? There are no jobs. So now he has a huge student loan that he's trying to pay off. And so now he's gone back to Los Angeles and he has a job. And the job he got because when he was in high school, he was taking CTE courses in digital recording and producing. And so now he's working in a recording studio and is having great success. He's recording not only contemporary recording artists, but opera people from the Los Angeles area because he's got the understanding of that particular art form and they trust him. And so they all want to record with him. And he is making a really great living. But the skills that got him that job, he learned in high school. He could have gone right to that job without the bachelor's degree from BYU, without the master's degree from Indiana. because he got a good enough set of skills and got the training and the confidence to be able to do what he is now doing in his CPE courses in high school. So there are so many ways to help this enormous army of Utah students accomplish what they want to accomplish. We've just got to continue working together as we have been doing, and particularly you folks here in USBE are doing such a terrific job of thinking of the student, where they came from, how we can prepare them to go on to wherever it is they might want to go, and how do we prepare them for the real world of the 21st century. And if there were courses and a group of experiences in our curriculum that I would put a high value tag on, it would certainly be our CTE courses that are really preparing that army of students who will become part of Utah's workforce almost immediately, using skills, real skills that they learned in the CTE classrooms, many of them not having to wait for that bachelor's and master's degree to jump into the workforce.
So Natalie Klein has her hand up. We
Yes,
need to-
board member Klein.
Yes, thank you. I just had a couple of questions. There was I think it was the first or second slide in the presentation. And I don't know if you want to pull that up, but I think it said all classes or all programs basically have to, I'm trying to remember the wording, qualify as to industry standards for one of the pathways. I think it was at the very beginning. And I was just wondering if all means all in this situation. Okay, so not that one. Okay, so I think this is where you're saying all core content areas will be CTE aligned, or I don't remember how you said it, but what I took was that all CTE courses must, or all programs would be fitted to a CTE pathway, meaning that all programs or classes, I'm guessing, in school must align to industry standards or be fitted to fit into a CTE pathway. Does that make sense? I'm kind of talking in circles, but so I'm wondering if that includes all traditional non-CET classes, CTE classes.
That's not the way our pathways are structured. The only time right now that we list core classes in our pathways is if there's a specific, what's the word I want to use to describe it? A specific need. For example, what's a good example to use?
Teaching as a profession. So in our pathway with teaching as a profession, we have 3 main courses that are CTE courses, but knowing that a teacher is going to need more than the skills in a CTE course, we're looking at what would the post-secondary requirements be. So in that situation, we've got a teacher who we know is going to have to go through a post-high school, a post-secondary program. So then we were looking at, okay, what courses would those be? Your math courses, your English courses, your psychology courses, those requirements. And so as we built out that pathway, we looked and said, okay, let's pull in some of these courses that we know are concurrent enrollment courses already being taught in the high schools that our high school students could take and add those into the pathway. So we have a few of those, again, very beginning level when it comes to what courses they are, again, like the English 1010s, your math 1050s, those types of courses we do have built into those pathways. But beyond that, the other place that you might see academic courses are supporting courses. So they're not built in the pathways in the sense of to be what we call a pathway completer, but we're saying these academic courses are the ones that if you take these will help benefit you to be successful going down that potential career path. So on our pathway chart, you'll see some academic courses under supporting courses. Those are not considered part of the pathway in the sense of our tracking of concentrators and completers, but it's an emphasis on those academic courses where you need, if you're not an architect, your math courses are extremely important. And so we do list those as supporting courses, again, communicating to our students that you want to do well in these courses. If this is the career base, because it's a lot of careers in that world, but this career base, you really want to do well in those. So that's where you might see some academic courses also on our pathway charts.
And let me just add to that. So CTE is one credit that's required for graduation, but you still maintain all of the core graduation requirements. Those are distinct, unique, separate, not required to be within pathways. They are what you approve. They're standalone core programs and core classes.
Okay, and so I think you answered my next question. Earlier, you were talking about CTE being a requirement for graduation in Utah. So it's just the one credit that's required of all students?
That's correct.
Okay. And then just a comment, as I'm looking at or listening to how we're trying to streamline everything and align it to avoid duplicity across the field of CTE and the schools that offer courses in that and blending or combining like the career technical colleges with the CTE program all into basically one system that is standardized across all of those areas or pathways. My only concern is that in doing so, it may be much more efficient and cleaner and easier to track everything, but I worry that it will reduce the market competition in that area and make it so there isn't, I mean, if there's competition between the schools for who's the best year, it's going to drive higher quality programs. Whereas if everything is aligned and there's no competition there, then it could easily devolve into a substandard program because there's nothing driving it to be better. So that would be my comment.
Thank you.
I don't know that I can answer that, but I'm just talking on a personal level, how we've seen this used in my own family. But I do have the same concerns that Board Member Klein has, that if we're not cautious, we end up doing a funneling of children instead of a flexibility for education. And I think that's something we always have to keep in mind with CTE and other areas, is always making sure that we're not pushing kids in a direction, that we're allowing that choice to take place and the availability to move from one to the other if they choose down the road. But just to speak to that alignment, we've benefited from it because I have a child that has done the CTE as far as the culinary arts. And when she completed it, they sent us they've been working with Weber State, and they said, these courses will get you these credits. You've already completed those at Weber State, so to speak, because of that correlation. And she has some learning disabilities. So we worried about success at college, that kind of thing. But this was she thought, I could do this because I already have some credits there. I don't know if that makes sense. And so there is aligning it the right way so that kids still have that flexibility and possibilities, right? And then that choice is there for them. So I was impressed that Weber State, that there was that coordination there. I think it's that coordination that you're talking about. Am I accurate in saying that? And once again, I just think we do have to be careful that we don't start funneling children, that we have this course set, right? But then we also have the availability of possibilities. Maybe that's a way of saying that.
Yeah, it is a bit of a tricky situation, especially in the smaller rural schools. They can't offer everything. Even our largest schools can't offer every one of those pathways, and it would be ridiculous to think that they could or should. They offer what is important to them in their economic need in their community. They offer what They're able to with teachers who are qualified to teach those courses. The beauty of it all is that many skills that they learn, those durable skills that Superintendent Dixon talked about, those are transferable. So even though I always use the example of a wonderful student at Daggett High School who only had just a very tiny bit of options available to her, she did her very best with everything that she had. She took every CT class that she could. Her goal was to be a nurse. She went on to UVU and on from there and became a wonderful nurse. But everything that she learned in her ag courses and her ag pathway, she was able to transfer some of that knowledge and those durable skills into what she wanted at the point in time where she could access it.
Great.
Well, I just wanted to chime in. This is one of my second passions with the CTEs because I just see it in the real world application in our industry. You know, our main one is plumbing. So you see the need in the market in the construction world. So to know that there is like this kind of conversations coming back to the trades and just we need people that are passionate about getting their feet measure out, making good, measurements and building quality buildings and being proud of the work they do in that field. I think of a handful of other things. I'll bring it up later, but a couple courses or CTE things and develop this area because I see like there's kind of a need that's growing in an area that's kind of been forgotten because all of that job's been shipped across, the ocean blue. So anyway, I'm excited I just love this.
I'll give you the same answer that I give to my staff when they come, hey, we want to do this, show us the data. That's where we always start. Where are the needs? What is the job outlook? Is it high quality, high demand, high skill, high wage? And that's what we look at as we develop new programs. We're always open as long as we have the data to back it up.
Natalie, do you still have a question? You have your hand up.
Yes, it just, as far as the CTE program, how early does that start? I think it's a high school program, correct? But
So
at what point do they start introducing it to students? How early? These concepts, including, the college and career readiness concepts.
Yes. So there is a college and career awareness class that is designed for the high school, and in board rule, that is a course, a concept. Those standards have to be taught as part of middle school, and it is required for every student in middle school. But that is very much an exploration and awareness. What's out there? Most students only know, I'm sure you all know this, most students only know about jobs that they personally interacted with. Many of them have no idea what opportunities are available, what jobs are out there, what they might be really, really great at. And so we use that middle school time as a time for them to explore.
So I know, if I can follow up, Chair,
Please.
there's a college and career readiness manual that has been created by USBE for the elementary students or the elementary grades. And we have training videos on our website for teachers or CT, I don't know, not CTE specialists, but individuals within elementary schools who's are being trained to promote these kind of concepts and ideas at the very youngest of ages from the videos that I've watched on our site. Can you speak to that?
I apologize that I can't. I'm not, none of us in the room are familiar with those.
It's the cover of the manual is yellow, college and career readiness for elementary.
So that's a school counseling publication that I'm not familiar with.
So you don't coordinate with them in their developing those ideas with the elementary students?
We do, but I've not seen this document before.
I'm happy to send it. It's quite comprehensive.
Yeah, we have it up. It's developed by the school counseling folks.
So I guess I'm concerned about, yes, career is important, but I worry that we're pushing this too hard, too young, when kids should just be learning the basics and coming to love learning instead of being told to focus and start thinking and mapping out their career pathway, even in, first grade and beyond and up. So anyway, something that we probably should look into and decide if we're, if this is the direction we want to go. I don't know if it's been discussed by the board before, but the manuals exist and it's being taught and pushed in the elementaries.
Yeah, I was not aware of that at all, so I'll have to look at that, talk with the counseling folks to see how it's used for the applications.
Yeah, you might want to have them come do a presentation. It looks like it's focused on the role of an elementary school counselor. It's a guidance manual for elementary school counselors that's put together. It's not CTE focused, but it probably
It is college and career readiness focused.
so you might want to have them come present to you.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Now we'll check into that. All right, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or any other comments?
Yes, I have one more. How is it, I would assume that it's the local districts that, or LEAs that go through and they, like you were saying, they decide what courses to bring in as it fits to their area. Is that right? Is there a specific budget amount, like percentage that's put towards CTE classes with the LEAs? Do you know how that works on that end?
I do. I have great knowledge of that. That used to be my job. So there is.
That was a good plan.
There is an allocation, an add-on fund that is given for CT programs grades 9 through 12. We currently don't have any funding other than regular WPU for anything less than 9th grade. So that's why there's little at the middle school level. But we do have, and LEAs do qualify for funding based on enrollment and participations and things that are very carefully outlined in law and in board rule about how they earn that formula money that goes to them specifically for CT.
So I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about
Yeah.
Please.
And that definitely, I'm seeing, well, and we don't have to go here today, I can reach out to later, but I was wondering how it ties in with the associate's degree, which we brushed on something on that yesterday, but we can circle that later if we need to. And the other thing is, if they're getting an associate's degree, does that maybe leave out more opportunity for kids to take more of those CTE classes? And the other thing is, if students are graduating, I guess I'm looking for percentage, and there's some data here, 9th through 11th grade, and they can graduate. So some seniors will fill their schedule with like the fun classes, the CTE classes, and they have that schedule open up because they've accomplished all the core classes. Do we see that decline in the 12th grade of students? And you might not know this, but it would be fun to maybe look at some of those numbers. Are we seeing that seniors are filling their schedules with more CTE classes if they've already completed their core credits? Or are they choosing to not be heavily involved their senior year? Or is that affected also by students that might be getting the general education certificate or their associate's degree? So that's a large question in one, and
The answer is E, all of the above. So, and it's very, in my experience, it's very different based on LEA and school and what the school's priorities are. Some schools are more apt to let students take a much lighter load and have release time during their senior year if they're on track for graduation. Others require students to have a full schedule. It's very different from one school to the next.
Just to add on to that, personal experience, my daughter earned her associate's degree in high school. So going through the system, went through and did all that. In graduating, the course that stood out most to her was her business courses. She still was able to take her business courses, and she's now at USU in the business program. So it was included as part of her program. And because she was able to work towards that, she's just that further ahead as she has entered USU, and she's in year 2 of USU, and again was able to skip that part of it because she did in high school. She still was able to move further down and and really in all honesty, they told her it was because of her focus in business and because of her experience through the CTSO of DECA was how she got accepted into that business school as technically a freshman / junior because her courses were done. So it was just part of her program.
Thank you very much for spending time with us this morning. We appreciate it. We're excited about your program. We'll see a lot more of you very soon.
No, I was letting you know. No.
All right, so we're now to.
No, I answered my own question, so that's always reassuring, right? Sorry.
Sometimes you have to just talk about it.
Yeah.
out loud.
All right, we have an action item.
73%.
Enough of all this information and interesting, fun stuff. We gotta get to work.
Yeah.
Okay, we have, board policy 5002, assessment and accountability, policy advisory committee. And we'll turn the time over to, Superintendent Nielsen to, walk us through this.
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to be able to talk about this topic. We have a couple of visitors I'll introduce in just a second as well. But let me give you a little background. You've talked about this in an executive session probably last month. So for the larger audience's awareness, this policy that establishes the Assessment Accountability Policy Advisory Committee includes very distinct membership that's been identified by the board. There's 13 voting members that the board appoints based on individuals' roles, including in that membership is 2 LEA assessment directors were included in the 13 members. In that policy, it identifies that another group may request the board to add the group as a member of APAC by submitting a petition to the board's assessment accountability section director. The director will notify the group of the board's decision. So the Utah Association of Assessment Directors, UAD is their acronym, submitted a petition that you reviewed previously in your executive session. And it's my understanding that it was directed through the executive session that that petition be brought to the Standards Assessment Committee meeting for discussion. Hal Sanderson, who's a leader for Canyon School District, and Adam McMickle, who's a leader for Ogden School District. They both represent leadership positions for the Utah Association of Assessment Directors are here. They are the individuals who submitted the petition with the request that leadership from that group, one slot, usually it's the president, I think, has traditionally been interested in serving in this important committee for the board, be allowed to be at one of those formal positions, or the committee could expand the 13 members to 14 and add a UAD leadership position, which is a voted position by the membership of that body. So that's what brings this item to the agenda. I know there were some questions that were forwarded to me from Kelsey James from the board and executive commission or executive committee. I've forwarded those to these two fine gentlemen, and they're prepared to talk about those questions and provide answers.
Okay. Well, we're happy to have you here with us. Come on up. You need to stay in the corner.
Would you like to sit? Thank you. Appreciate it.
We're wide open. Go right ahead and tell us.
Appreciate it. Adam McMickle, Ogden School District, currently the Executive Director of Student Achievement. One of my roles in our district is to serve as the Assessment Director, and I am currently the voted President of the Association. And I'm Hal Sanderson of Canyon School District, and my current role on the Association of Assessment Directors is past president, and we have 2 formal positions. We're a small organization in terms of structure, but we have about 20 members districts across the state right now. Yeah, a little more specifics there, 20 member districts, which includes 20 directors from those districts, 28 total members. Some of the larger districts have district level leadership to help with the assessment practices in their districts. With those 20 member districts, we cover approximately 73% of the student K-12 student population in the state represented through our association. We're hoping to bring on one more district in our upcoming meeting. That would take that number closer to 80% representation among K-12 students who are enrolled in district schools. We represent just over 80% right now, and if that other district comes on board in our next meeting, we would be at 90% representation across the state. Hal, since you offered up the petition formally,
Yeah, we've, the association, through our bylaws is, open to, assessment directors. We are kind of advocate for best practices around assessment and accountability. Typically, it's medium to larger districts that are able to have some time to maybe develop a little deeper skill set. In our smaller districts, people are wearing so many hats that there's several of us who've been in the job for several years that are trying to be more of a resource and mentorship for new assessment directors that come on. It's kind of like drinking from a fire hose, even though a lot of our members come from either district positions or middle school or high school principal positions. But when they get into all of the roles that you all have and kind of that understanding, we try to provide a little bit more one-on-one mentorship and informal talking to each other around practices. We want to share documents around good practices. So we do a lot of sharing about presentations that we do to our local boards and principals. And so we see that as a training and a resource that we try to do. So we aren't all in isolation recreating the bill. And so there is that collegiality that we have of new people saying, well, I have this issue. What have you done in the past? What advice do you have for me? That we try to serve. And I guess I would say one thing with our bylaws and the practicality, you all have through that group development of accountability rules. They're pretty technical. This association or 20 members, we're kind of the rubber meets the road. We are the point people for our districts and our teachers and our principals and our board members to really say, what does it mean? What are the talking points that we have around what it's saying? And more so, what does this calculation mean and where did it come from? And so there is a technical component of explaining the calculations that you all have within that committee. And so we see ourselves as a pretty good resource when this policy group is talking about changes. We're pretty deep into that process where we're always explaining it to our principals and trying to bring it to practice within our districts and across thousands of teachers. So we just feel that we like that role. We see ourselves as a collaboration and collaborating with the board and with Darren and his team.
I think building off that, thank you, Hal. The cadence of our organization is built around that purpose. We meet monthly, a week following the USBE's assessment directors meeting. And not to repeat what was said in that meeting, because your staff does a wonderful job presenting that information, but to provide that additional nuance that comes with leading district operations and having that level of discussion. And certainly that's what we kind of hope to offer. We are committed to the intent and purposes of this particular committee. I believe in talking with Hal, when we put this petition for you to consider, one, we want to serve the interests of our districts in the state. We are passionate. We're a rare group that is passionate about assessment practices in the state and doing right by our leaders, our teachers, our students, and our families and communities. And so we would hope to engage and not only that, being a purpose-driven leadership that is in our bylaws, that we will engage with the state board and community leadership as well to be a part of the conversation. On the second part, I look at the composition, reading through that particular policy, and an assumption on my part, and check me if I'm incorrect, but seeing all the great members in different positions, I expect the idea was to have a diversity of voice from a variety of stakeholders. So within one particular position, if this position were to go forward, you would have a single member representing a wide body of diverse voices from across the state. And as the president, I am duty bound and not just speak personally or speak specifically to Ogden School District, although those experiences will factor in, but to represent what is discussed across the situation.
Great.
Questions.
Yeah, please.
So are any, okay, a couple things. You are district assessment directors. Everybody on there's district assessment directors.
And staff members. So
So
if
when you
they're
say
in,
staff,
it's fairly open,
principal, educator.
District levels.
district level staff. We're kind of that liaison role. I mean, that was where the organization is. We just don't have principals who have time to be able to
Okay.
go through that. We're kind of their avenue, in terms of answering the questions. Though many come from the principalship when they're advanced, maybe or change jobs. That's where we typically are training.
Specifically though, through our bylaws, the idea being district level leadership.
Okay.
And so from our larger districts that I mentioned before, they may have multiple staff members just because of the scope and scale of their works, the number of schools. And so we allow not just the director, but those critical leadership positions within assessment.
Do you have anybody from your from regional service centers or from rural?
We have
small districts, which is involved in us as well, but it would be a district level position.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking rural, because often
We have Cash and Mox Elder,
yeah.
are
Okay.
two heavy members who have been active for years, that have a much smaller population of student.
And what about charters? Do you have any charter?
We don't have current charter members at this time.
Again, coming back to bylaws, it's kind of getting into the nuance of operationalizing assessment practices within the district.
Sure. Okay, and I'm just trying to figure out the framework versus what we've got going on. How many members are currently on our committee, our APAC? How many of your members?
I am the only member right now, and I serve one of the district assessment directors slots of the two.
Okay, and then just a last question. I'm looking down the list of possible members, and from what you've said, it sounds to me like there's at least 5 possibilities of your members currently applying for and getting on. Let me just tell me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to balance things out. So one member who with expertise or experiencing serving students who are at risk for underachievement. Would you say that would qualify any of you or not?
Typically, that would be more of our title directors at the district level, I would think. In terms of
Do you have
active
anybody
students
on
or-
your current association that
And
would?
the size, we have some members who would serve in multiple capacities.
Okay, and then 2 LEA assessment directors, 2 at-large members with assessment expertise. Would any of your members be able to, they would qualify for all those, right?
The assessment director position, so I don't know who's typically filled the other.
2 at-large members with assessment expertise. I mean, I'm just saying your members could apply for those, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just trying to do the numbers game here. Technically, you could have 5 of your members that sit on your board, not your board, but right, either leadership or whatever. Association members could apply for any of those 5 positions. Well, maybe -1, right? You'd have to have specific expertise. So there's nothing that hinders that currently, right? Okay. Okay, I don't know if anybody else has questions. I just want to make sure we're being, you know what I mean, fair, balanced, or whatever. And I understand your expertise because I've worked with Cal before.
I know.
And you have a very,
You're kind.
he's awesome.
I like
And
your
the other entities we have that sit on there are fabulous too. They just bring a depth of knowledge. The only thing I'm concerned about is when we take an association and we now say this association, then that means that when we have another, let's say there's another group that says, oh, we want, do you know what I mean? And I'm thinking if there's not a way for you, and you guys have those expertise, right? We want you there. I just am looking, saying, is there a way for you to get there? And it looks to me like we have 13 members, unless I'm counting wrong. We've left it odd, so we have a right, so that we could not be the voting would be right? But that's 5, that's a possibility of 5, that's like a doing math, right? You're talking pretty close to more than a third, right? Could possibly be there. So I'm just trying to weigh that out.
That's true, and I appreciate the concern.
Yeah.
Darren brought that to our attention. So of the options that were presented, I agreed that potentially having this serve as one of those 2 assessment director slots rather than adding one was my preferable option moving forward. But I don't disagree. Any of those slots that you mentioned would be available to any of the assessment directors that could be a part of our association.
One other question, do we often, in these areas, do we have so many people filing for this that
That was my question.
we're interviewing a million people and we're like, I'm sorry, we have to stick to someone that has, are we getting so many?
No, I believe
Okay.
we've got a vacancy for a high school principal right now. And when I saw Rob McDaniel, that changed positions in board meeting yesterday, who's also an APEC member, I've got to go revisit what assignment he is because we may have to, he's as a secondary principal, that would create another vacancy. But yeah, that vacancy's been open for 4 or 5 months, and I'm still petitioning to get people to apply.
And I'm specifically looking at, the expertise with students with at risk or the assessment directors or the assessment expertise. Are those ones that we have like 15 people filing for those?
No, not that number, but those slots are easier to get applicants. from the
Right.
board.
But that's not, okay. And that wouldn't be one that we would have to, we're not eliminating anything, but we're trying to figure out, trying to help you guys be part of that, right? Without, I just want to make sure we're not saying, oh, this one association, because then we start setting a precedence. And I understand it allows us here, just thinking, do you have the ability to do that already? And to me, it seems that way. But I just wanted to make sure, anyways, those are my questions. I'll let others ask theirs too.
I certainly see the value of the representation of that large of a number of people that are spending their days and nights worrying about assessment across the state. And especially the fact that you are meeting on a regular basis so that on a monthly basis, you have that communication network readily available to you to seek additional conversation and feedback and input on whatever kinds of matters. I don't know that any of the members as they are listed in the document would have that opportunity to receive input on that regular of a basis from that many assessment specialists and so I think that there could be great value in having that voice just to the board and to USBE because they have that they're representing so many of the voices across the state. So it would almost be like one of those that our administrators we get 40 times the amount of representation and good ideas to assist us in our work if one of those really was the president of an organization like this. See some real value expanding the possibility of representation and input and communication.
And Chair Booth, I appreciate that sentiment. I may make a statement now that may undermine our proposal a little bit. I hope it doesn't. Regardless of the decision, the association will remain committed to be engaged on that. Whatever that looks like, whether it be, we try to occupy those 5 slots and we always ensure that our members are aware of those openings to staying connected. We have a great relationship with the USBE. So I appreciate, we certainly want to be a part of this, the reason for the petition, but regardless of the decision.
And I think
they will remain committed to that task.
just to add, the word accountability policy advisory, it's very technical on what these things are in terms of policy. And it's great. I have great high school principals. But for he or she to jump in, it takes 2 years to even get the vocabulary down on a lot of the technical things that we do. And so when there's just maybe one of us from our association, our role is to just try to ask questions, because it'd be like, here's two options, what do you think? And in a lot of regards, we're there to try to just open conversations around the options that, to facilitate that conversation with the policy group where they're not always into some of those technical things. And so that's, we just try to add the voice to that to say, let's see what this looks like a little bit more practically.
And not to dismiss the vetting process that goes through any application for those existing 5 positions with the acting president. And certainly I hope this doesn't come off with ego, because that's me right now. But if they get to that position, they've garnered the respect of the majority of the assessment directors across the state, and proven a certain technical acumen within the assessment space as well.
Great.
Chair Moss, can I just comment?
Please do.
For full transparency, I'm a previous member of UAUD, and I consider these gentlemen to be my friends, great colleagues. But one of the things that's brought this to this point is the election cycle for the president of the UAUD Association. You have current, post. You have this 3-year cycle. These positions are 4-year terms. Typically, when you appoint somebody to this policy committee, it's a 4-year term. So it throws. So Hal is to the point we were talking about earlier. Hal is representing UAUD through his appointment. He's connected to 2 groups, but his term as past president will come to an end this year. And then it creates the possibility there's a window where a UAUD member is no longer part of the assessment accountability policy advisory committee, which is what brought this petition forward. Those discussions is what brought this forward.
I'm just curious, what are the fun things you do at your meetings?
It's a party.
I would just love to come, I'm sure it is.
We had a pretty extensive conversation about retention policy last time, so.
So I may have a motion here. I do get concerned. I understand the technicality of all of it, right? You guys, that's why I'm asking about what you do at your meetings, right? 'Cause there is value, even though it's not technical value, in the other elements, right? And I wouldn't want to water them down. A teacher, parent, right? They bring in other dimensions that are not even mathematical, right? Those are emotional sometimes, right? And sometimes they're things that we don't consider. So I worry about watering that down. And we can I'm just going to throw this out there for discussion, but I would see maybe some value in a non-voting member, but that still allows for that possibility of those, that discussion to take place. But there's no reason why anyone from your organization can't still those 5 positions, apply for those and be part of that. I don't know. Any thoughts?
Yes, let me just add to what your potential motion might be, because everybody might not know this. There are also non-voting members, as you're alluding to, 2 members of the board. Board Member Earl is one of those. The board's assistant superintendent, 1 member who serves as staff at the Utah State Legislature, and 1 member from the governor's office. So you've got those 5 non-voting members that attend the meetings regularly, or invited to them, can help inform the agenda. So there are those slots, and there is room in your policy to add. I think where you're going, Board Member Earl, to add a UAUD representative or president of UAUD or something to a non-voting member as well.
Are there other associations out there, assessment associations?
Within the state, we're the only assessment association, but our colleagues in special ed, Title I, the business officials of every district, curriculum director, those large departments all have associations across the state.
But not assessment association.
We're kind of that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out what the statewide, what else is out there that once, if we say yes, then who else is going to say, now you got to add us on, now which it may not be applicable. And I see the value of the expertise. That's why I'm trying to.
So
yeah.
What's your reaction to the idea of non-voting appointment similar to legislative staff and board members and others that are non-voting members, so that the voice is there.
A lot of it, I've been an active member. I think I've only missed one over the last 3 years. And I know that there's the COVID dynamic in it all. But through the reality of the situation, it seems like there's only 5 people in the meetings that are voting numbers. And attendance has been pretty sparse in terms of getting together. I mean, one thing that we can just offer is that we're committed to the role and be able to consistently attend. And so my preference would lean towards the voting side, just because it looks good in writing, but the reality of how many people come together across that board and are able to vote, it seems like it's been off quite a bit. And I don't know if that's because of COVID or other matters, but boy, it's, I love the richness of the committee on paper, but at least when I'm there, I don't quite see that when we're doing voting. It's been smaller attendance, I guess, when there's decisions to be made.
But I do think, that even if there's less voting members there, that the dialogue, it's been my experience that it's been a very collaborative effort. That rarely is it the voting is a very divisive or split. Does that make sense? So I guess what I'm saying, you still, even in non-voting position, that collaboration is still there, and often it's I could see that as being influential to help frame the votes or the discussion. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and my response is, as a concession, potentially to move past the barriers and concerns for overpopulating that particular committee with members of our association. We had an official voice in that capacity, not just called in to provide some additional counsel. When you have an official seat, even in a non-voting, I think that's a reasonable concession if that would move us past the barrier. Although I would appreciate the opportunity to be a voting member, but if that is the concession that needs to be made.
Can I ask a question? So tell me what problems or concerns have led you to want to have a voting part of this? What are some things that you've seen that you're like, we want more of the voice at the table?
I would just say that historically, even before, it seemed like there was just a larger group, and that we were part of that larger group. And it seems again, it's like there's been more of a dwindling of active participation in that committee, and the decisions have really big ramifications. Really big ramifications. We were debating about certain PSI calculations and designations in terms of which decision and which way you want to go, and that's affected hundreds of schools. And I just think that we need more voices discussing this around the table. And unfortunately, it comes pretty fast. It would be great if we had a lot more study time, but it seems we have it a couple days before, and they're pretty meaty subjects. And so we just want to make sure that there's a diverse idea of people of being able to spend some time with it. That's all. And we spend time more than most. That's all. Not in a way of arrogance or anything, but just saying we're there having to talk to everybody about what's going on, and they look to us for some answers. And so we just want to make sure there's good decisions.
I think in bringing this proposal before you, it wasn't a single issue. We didn't come with an agenda to drive any particular way. Really working through Hal and considering his membership and his timeline, we were looking more what Darren had mentioned, that stability of representation. In those monthly meetings, speaking of the fund we do have an update from that particular committee. What's being discussed, what are the policies that are being shaped at this particular level? How's the association, all these district members, how are they feeling? How are any issues related to those business rules or those policies impacting your district? Feedback. Often that will come to action where they even bring back the association the next month. Reach out to your local communities, talk to your principals, your teachers that might be impacted, get their input, and so we can bring it back. And currently, that's worked because we have had representation on. We just want to make sure that there's that stability, that we rely on that level of engagement.
Because I think I'm cycling out this calendar year. I believe my term ends.
In July. Is that
Yeah,
when-
I believe my term ends. That would put us at, like you said, there's some at-large possibility, but not having any numbers. Because of we're in a 2-year cycle of what we do, versus the 4-year cycle. So I guess that consistency is the other idea.
So that would be my recommendation is the non-voting member. I think that just gathering information, the possibilities of at least 5 possible people from your entity, if they chose to apply, could be on there. And then just, we do want the expertise there, but that would be my recommendation. So I'd just make that motion that, help me get the name right. What's your organization?
Association of Assessment.
I would make a recommendation that Utah Association of Assessment Directors, that we add a position for a non-voting member. It still allows health there right now, but it allows for, even when that comes up, one of you could apply or reapply. So
So
any
is your motion that the president, of that organization,
I think they could make that decision. I don't think we need to.
Because your president might actually be appointed
We
by
wanted
the
to
board,
say
one of those
leadership.
other 5 slots.
just a representative is always, a non-voting member is always there?
Yeah, and they can decide amongst your
Designated by
group
the-
what you want to
Yeah,
do
we
there.
could amend our bylaws to, if one of our actions to always have it that native representative, be it the president or another member. So set look, the policy 5002, which is the APEC policy, be updated to include a non-voting member for the Utah Association of Assessment Directors.
You know, I'm inclined to be in agreement with this suggestion. I'm currently the representative of the board to USBA. And I'm a non-voting member of USBA Board of Directors representing USB. And I don't feel any I feel that in discussions, in the meetings, there's no lack of opportunity for discussion or for input. And they though I'm not voting in the end, they're certainly hearing from me and eager to have the conversation and have my perspective as a member of the board. They're in all the decisions that are being made. And I haven't felt hampered at all. Just about anything that I've said has just gone right into the decision-making process. And so I think that the fact that your organization is as functional and as communicative as it is, that your designated representative will certainly be in the know and be able to provide what you're suggesting that they provide in this station.
I think if there were a limit to the availability of representation to get on this entity, then it would be a different story. But I don't see it as, I don't think it's limited. And I do think, just looking at the other members, that I do think there needs to be those other representations there too. So I think it leaves you still that availability. So. You
Good.
want to take a vote?
Yes.
I have a
So,
question.
yes.
How
Go ahead.
would the non-voting member be selected? Would it be board appointed? Would it be leadership on the committee or that would pick it, that would choose the person?
My understanding, it would be the organization themselves would designate someone, just like the governor's office designates a member there. And the board designates their members and the legislature, yeah, designates their members. So that's,
So you're looking for diversity of thought and opinions to add to expanding the conversations and deliberations that they have. How do we know that if they appoint the people, that they don't just choose people that think the same way and not that don't actually provide different thoughts?
when you say think the same way, what
Well,
do you mean?
you wanted to create a committee or bring more people in that could add different dimensions to the dialogue, right?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's add expertise with you, which is the dimension they want.
Okay.
They would be adding the expertise because of their direct work on the ground. I'm sorry, I'm answering for you, but I feel like it's the expertise element that they're wanting to bring. So that would be the diversity here versus, from what I'm looking at this, you've got a teacher, parent, school district superintendent, administrator. So those are all on the ground, but these
All in
people
there.
are expertise. So anyways, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Good. So we have a motion that policy 5002 be updated to include non-voting member for the Utah Association of Assessment Directors. And all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Natalie, I'm board member Klein.
No.
No, okay, thank you. So that's 4 ayes and 1 no vote. So we'll report that to the full board for their consideration in our next meeting.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you for all the work you do.
Thanks for
Might be to
your,
one of your partners.
Good to see you in person.
I don't know, we've always met over Zoom, huh?
and in your next meeting, talk about those positions that 5 people might be able to qualify for as those are coming out.
One thing that would help us, if you don't mind a
Yeah.
simple request, and that is, it'd be good to know when the cycle is, when those positions open. We need, as an association, we need like type of about a 10, 12 months to be able to be in a position to respond. Sometimes it's like, hey, it's up, and again, we're all struggling with communication.
It's usually July
For us.
December, so usually
or December.
depending on when they're appointed, but oftentimes I can see on the schedule when they're scheduled to end. We also have some like our secondary principal who this past spring got appointed as a district leader, and so that created an immediate vacancy. So we most of the time go how, and it's something I can do better at.
Just especially as board
Yeah.
member, we're all talking about the at-large.
Yeah.
It'd be nice to know some of that cycle, to try to map out our own leadership cycle that we have.
But we can work that into our cadence. Yeah, I can do that.
Think of how those brains work, and they're already mapping out.
Thanks again for your.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Consideration, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Item 2.5 has to do with R277-326 early learning amendment. And, hi, how are you? Julie. You want to walk us through this? And what the amendment is?
I'm Jeannie, I'm the policy advisor. This we're just seeing a small amendment to a section of the early learning grant program. And so this rule really goes through the grant program itself and all of the things that are part of that grant program. The only change that we're making is that exempting some educators who exclusively work with students who are deaf. That's correct. Okay, I want to make sure. who are staff, and so we have worked in collaboration, our staff work in collaboration with experts in that field who said it's just not necessary in Shrek for schools. So that's just what we're bringing for you today. It's like 88 through 92.
And it looks to me like it just ties it right back to the law. This is what you're required to do if you're doing this, and then in this case, there's an exemption.
Yep.
Right? I didn't read anything else than that.
That is everything that's exactly it.
Yep. Okay.
I have a
I don't know.
question.
Questions? Oh. Okay.
Yes, Natalie.
Yes, I just thinking about making an exemption for the educators that teach early literacy to deaf students. To me, it would seem that they would need more training. Deaf students can still read, right? And in fact, this is one of their only avenues, one of their few avenues that they have. They have more limited avenues for learning and understanding. And I would think reading would be even more important for them. And so if I don't understand taking away the requirement for those educators when, in my opinion, it's more important for those educators. Can somebody talk to that?
We have someone.
Yes.
Julie Clark, yes. Julie Clark, K-3 literacy specialist, and I work overseeing this grant program and also with Lexia, who provides letters. And we reached out to, because we had some of the exact same concerns that you were expressing, Board Member Klein, and we went directly to the authors of the letters program, and they agreed that there is a portion of letters that is not applicable because it mainly focuses on the speech sounds. And because those students can't hear to produce those sounds, it becomes not appropriate for them to be learning that. We are still, even though we are having this, we're putting this exemption in, we are still offering the availability for educators that want to participate in the portion of letters that does apply to them, which would cover like vocabulary and comprehension. That is available for them to still participate in if they choose to.
So is the letters program, is it online? Is it a tech-based program?
There is a portion that is online, there is reading, and then there are live sessions that they participate with. And part of the work that they do, they go through a bridge to practice, which has exercises that they engage in with students to apply what they have learned. So it has many levels.
So I was testing out one of the early literacy online programs that a district put out. And kind of going through the tutorial or their example opportunity to just practice and see how it works. And a lot of the screens for the early learners was what you described, where they say a letter and then they make a sound and they have the child repeat the sound. And they did that multiple times, but at the same time, they weren't putting the actual letters or words on the screen. And so it was simply sound. And so I could see why that would be ineffective for a deaf student, because they're not seeing anything, they're just hearing, which I thought was actually problematic for even the regular students. Why teach a sound of a letter and not show the letter?
Yes, so there are different parts of literacy, and the part that you're talking about is the phonological and phonemic awareness piece, where we are working with students where they are just manipulating sound and learning the sounds and putting the sounds together, whether they're segmenting or blending, and just learning to identify those speech parts of sound. And that's a very foundational skill that we build on. And as soon as students are ready, we do introduce the letters. And then that's when it kind of converts from being that phonological and phonemic awareness to a phonics piece. So
so that part kind of bothered me, because I thought most of these kids, they come to school already speaking, and it seemed more like a speaking lesson in how to speak and make sounds that they've been making since, they first opened their mouths. And now we should be training them on how to connect those sounds with the letters that make those sounds. And so it felt to me like going backwards, or that maybe the intent was to help English language learners, but putting all students on that same level instead of, or, I had all 4 of my children that were reading fluently before they even entered kindergarten. And so if I had my children have to sit through those programs, they would have just wanted to die. It was how boring, and yet they have to go through all of these layered modules that are so remedial. Kids just pick up on language naturally from the time that they're born. And so to go back and make such a high priority on that aspect without connecting it to the actual letters and words, to me is a huge waste. I don't know how to say it any nicer, but this is not speaking obviously to what we are looking at right now, but it's just my frustration with the whole, if this is what the phonemic awareness early literacy program is, I have huge problems with that. And I think our deaf students, again, all of our students deserve something more rigorous.
So
Thank you. This is something that we can discuss in greater detail in another meeting. Let's
When
come
might
back.
that be?
Any agenda item that you would like to add to any of our meetings can be added through board leadership. And
Well, I
you'd
would
like
make that I would.
It's not you, what you would do is you'd get 2 other board members, you would write it up and submit it. So it's the regular process. I
That's
do
great.
have, can I ask just one question?
Of course.
So my understanding though is that it's this particular grant with this training, that the students that are deaf, those teachers already have specialized training in this area. So it's not like they're not getting training on how to help students read. What they're doing though is that this particular area is inefficient for them, right? Okay, I'm ready to make a motion.
Please do.
I just wanted to make sure we're not leaving them out, that it just isn't relevant here. Okay, so the committee approves R277326 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
Thank you. We have a motion that the committee approves R277326 draft 1 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading. Any further questions or discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous. Is that correct, Natalie?
I just have so many mixed feelings about this. But considering that part does not apply to the deaf students, I'm a no.
No, okay. Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Those of you that came on in. Let's move on to action item 2.6. Private school, homeschool, and Bureau of Indian Education student participation in public school achievement test amendment. And we have Angie Stallings and Darren. So
I sent him a text.
Angie and Angie.
Yes, I'll do my best to cover while Darren's not here. It's tough because he's, so much more in this area than I
Especially
do.
with
But
that
let me,
lovely 405 that he's wearing.
oh,
today.
I'll have to check that out. All right, so R277604, we, and Andrew, just so you know, the recommendation we have will actually be to move draft 2 when we get there, based on some feedback that we received on Wednesday from superintendents and charter representatives. But first, let me talk about the rule in general, and then I can explain the amendment that they requested that you'll see in draft 2. This rule is an existing rule that provides or allows private school and homeschool students to participate in statewide assessments if they'd like. So if they wanted to take the ACT, or they did want to participate in RISE or one of the benchmark assessments, it's an option for private school and homeschool students, as well as students who are are enrolled or participating in Bureau of Indian Education schools. As staff, we thought it would be helpful to update this rule to also provide that opportunity to scholarship students. So the Utah Fits All Scholarship, as well as the Student Special Needs Opportunity Scholarship. And the language, you'll notice, is very similar. In some places, we've just added qualifying or eligible schools to be treated the same way as private schools. And then we've clarified that students who are scholarship students but participating in a home-based program, meaning they're not enrolled in a qualifying or eligible school, would be treated in the same way that homeschool students are. So that's the general why behind bringing this rule forward. And now the difference between draft 1 and draft 2 is that there are 3 places within the rule that strike the word written. So right now it says that each LEA has to have a written policy. The feedback was that some LEAs have never had a request for a home or private school or now scholarship student participate. And so they did not necessarily want to have to go through the practice of creating a full policy that might need to be approved by the board to accommodate a student or 2 students when they feel like they are easily able to do that when requests come through. And I hate to speak for Darren, but I'm going to do my best, and then hopefully he can correct the record if I'm wrong when he gets here. But I believe last year they had between 85 and 95 students total throughout the state who participated under this allowability. So it's not a huge percentage of our private and or homeschool students who've been taking advantage of it. Or
Was it maybe ACT?
I don't know that.
Because that's what I think it would seem that would be, in my view, that a lot of kids would be wanting to do that.
Yeah.
I guess we'll wait and see.
Or charter private schools that have English language learners that want to have them take the language proficiency or assessment tests.
Well, charter schools would be.
They are.
administering
I mean,
that.
sorry, but like
A private school or homeschool, yes, it could be that as well.
Yeah, okay.
Especially if they're wanting to get any services that they might be entitled to. You know, I can't remember what they're called right now. I don't know if they're called equitable services, but that might just be for students with a disability. But yeah, there's different reasons why families might want, but ACT might be a very popular one.
And I'm curious if there's a cost or if it's just a matter of obtaining because the state pays for all 11th graders.
I don't believe there's a cost because we don't have anything.
Well, there is something in here about cost, yeah.
But I believe that cost only applies to the private school that jointly participates. So remember that if private school eligible or qualifying schools participate, actually those schools will actually jointly work with the district or charter school to administer.
And the ACT would be a perfect example.
Yeah, so I don't believe that homeschool students are charged a fee when they want to participate. The fee only applies to the private school, but Darren will know. And just so you know, I threw out a stat of between 85 and 95 students had taken advantage of this opportunity last year.
It might even be higher than that.
Okay.
So when we reminded assessment directors a few years ago, an issue had come up in Granite District actually. And a lot of LEAs hadn't attended to this policy, which requires them to create a local policy. Really is the key to this, triggers that lets parents know if I have a homeschool or private school student in your LEA, how do I interact to get access to these tests? And ACT was the one that raised that specific issue. But Salt Lake City School District had at that time a defined policy, and they had private school students that were engaging through their LEA with some of the statewide assessments. It was probably over the number, but I don't have a definitive number.
And Darren was not in the meeting I was in on Wednesday when the superintendents and charter representatives requested this, but they actually requested that the policy not be required to be written. Because they said, especially Royce representing charter schools, that there's probably very low chance that charter schools will have these requests. And so it was his request that they not be written, which a couple of the district superintendents were like, oh yeah, we agree, because it's gonna, you're right, or, you know, Salt Lake, granted, some of the larger districts are probably more likely to get them, and I think the others just didn't want to have to do the written policy. So I wanted to throw that out, that something that you said made it sound like a way that a student might become aware of the opportunity is through something being written.
Well,
Yeah.
let me bring up the Granite District issue that raised this a few years ago, and that one actually ended up in their legal department. Because it was a student, and I don't remember all the details, this student's parent and student wanted this student to take the ACT, the 11th grade ACT, which is paid for by state tax dollars. And when they initially contacted Granite District, if I remember, whoever the representative was, they said, you've missed the deadline because of accommodation requirements for ACT. They have a pretty early window. If you need accommodations, you have to let us know. And I don't know whether the student needed accommodation or not, but that ended up, the reason it got to my desk is the legal team at Granite had reached out to me. So I don't know whether it's wise or not to have a local policy for LEAs.
So I'm
But
understanding, you're saying they had a policy that you could submit by a certain point, but it missed the accommodation deadline, so therefore parents were upset, something like
I
that?
don't know that Granite had a policy. The parents showed up, found out, hey, I want to take these. Oh, we can get it for free. Showed up at the school in their neighborhood. The school official said, you've missed the deadline to apply, to get in. We've already submitted our file. Because they're treating them like the regular fully enrolled. But, yeah, I don't know whether it's wise or not to have a local policy.
It still says policy, it's just
They
not
still have
written.
to have a
I don't
policy.
see, so how do you have a policy that's not written?
Not a practice, right?
It-
Yeah. Like a verbal standard.
You just have
practice.
a policy in your mind, I'm just like, how do you, I don't understand how you can do that.
Having been worked for a
Okay.
district for many years, there are a lot of things that districts technically call procedures and they're written procedures. Because policies technically have to be adopted by a board. And so
So this
I
may
think
need
that
to be
it-
something else.
we
then.
might say have procedures in place, but I think that in general, a policy is simply something to either have a written or a practice that you do over and over and over again. But then there's the technical part. That
Yeah.
technically in boards bylaws, local boards bylaws, policies are passed by their board and procedures are something that administrative staff can do.
Or
And this-
guidelines, right? That could be another thing. It's a guidelines. Okay.
This says policies for homeschool, this says policies, but we're just restricted written. I don't understand. How do you have a policy without it being written somewhere, typed? I don't,
Yeah.
right?
It's more the requirement that, the Royce was kind of like wondering about. It's like, we don't want to require one more thing, right? But if it still says policy, it's still required, right?
This is not a new.
Doesn't seem like it fixes
Isn't new.
that issue.
It's not.
The only way to fix it would be to remove the whole part about having a policy, not just the written part.
But I think you would want something.
Well, I mean, I'm saying like if
Yeah.
to fulfill what he was looking
Yeah,
for,
yeah.
it seems like that you would have to remove all
Okay,
of it,
okay, I don't know, maybe there's some other questions. That to me just doesn't
Procedures.
make any sense. It could be changed to procedure.
Yeah.
And I can't.
Oh,
go-
sorry, I'm on line 101. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the first.
Oh,
question-
170, it's only a
first
couple.
question you asked,
For-
right,
It's
no
different
fees
for each
charged by
private,
Yeah.
Prohibited.
Do you want to log into Zoom?
Can I ask you a question on that cost one? Look at line 73 through 75. And it
Oh,
says
into
that
the
cost of
motions, or do you want
presentation
it
to be paid.
Yeah, just go into the Google
That,
Doc.
yeah, that's what I was wondering about too. The ACT though, I know the state pays it, but what about, so RISE, they could
Well-
ask for payment for,
Only if they're charging only if there's a fee that's in their fee schedule for the local students. So on line 104, may not require a homeschool student to pay a fee that is not charged to traditional students.
what about
That's homeschool,
73?
but look
For
at
homeschool, yeah.
73, and that's scholarship students.
Yeah, because the private schools are charging the students a fee, right? So they're being compensated. Trying to think of an example where this could come into play. I can't think of one offhand. I know that in Box Elder, we used to have one of the online charter schools, we would let them use our facilities to test the students that attended their online school. We didn't charge them a fee, but, because they're another public school partner, but.
I'm just wondering if has anybody charged fees?
I don't know the answer to that.
What about ACT specifically?
Okay, well, it could be, it's just saying on line 73, reasonable cost for the participation of Utah private school or scholarship student in state assessments, which could be a variety of assessments.
Yeah. I can tell you there have been no questions that have come to my desk or have come in through the hotline about concerns with any fees being charged. Again, it's a small population of students we're talking about who would actually say,
Sure.
hey, I want to take a statewide test. I don't have to. But I haven't had any complaints that have come in my 6 years now.
Well, it would make sense if scholarship students have all this money that they're being given, that the schools would want to charge for that. And I have another question. Line 134 says shall include notice of any required parent or adult participation. What is that referring to? Required parent or adult participation? And are we legally able to write requirements into our rules for requirements for parents?
Well, the way I read that is if, for instance, the student needs to be transported to a location, so the LEA might say, well, we support private homeschool student testing and we do it at this facility. Maybe Granite, we say it's the Granite Technical Center. So you need to go there. So the parent or the student needs to provide transportation for them to get to that center. That might be an example of what parent participation might look like.
But we can't require that though. That's just up to the parent to figure out how to get their kid there. I mean, to tell them, this is where it's happening.
Yeah, it'd be their responsibility to do that.
I have a question.
Yeah.
If we're just talking about homeschool and private school students, why do we have to include the scholarship students because that's what they would be, right? I mean, if they're getting a voucher, then they're an either homeschool or private school student.
Actually, the scholarship, at least Utah Fits All very clearly states homeschool is different than a scholarship student, and scholarship student's a defined term. And I would say private school, I mean, technically scholarship students are receiving state funds.
Right.
And private school and homeschool students would not.
Unless they're a scholarship student.
Then they would be
homeschooled. Yeah, you're right. But that would be through the parent and the child, sort of. I mean,
Yeah,
it's not like the private school getting it directly.
so they're like
Yeah.
a new category.
It is.
Okay.
That's why I don't say just private schools. We list private school, eligible school, and qualifying school, because those are the two terms that the two different scholarship programs use. They call them, so like qualifying school means a school that is a private school that has a scholarship student enrolled. It is very technical, and I know it can get wordy, but we try to use the defined terms that the programs use in code as much as possible. And I do know that specifically that nuance between a homeschool student and a scholarship student who's based at home, like a home-based scholarship, was a very hot topic when it came to the discussion of Utah Fits All.
Don't want the lines blurred.
They want, some want the term homeschool student to be very like
Separated,
no state funding, like very much autonomous from versus a scholarship student who happens to be participating in the program through a home-based would be different.
Yeah, but remember, I have some similar conversations with Angie's like, do we really need to update? Do we need to get all this other changes done here? Because what flagged my attention was the prohibitions on sharing data that are included in the Utah Fits All scholarship, which are not necessarily required for homeschool or private school elements. So that's why I came to policy and says, hey, this bill requires us, we should look at this rule. And then when Angie started making changes that were broader than what I thought, because I'm like, well, aren't they all homeschool or private school anyway?
Yeah.
So I was on that same spot.
And on the data piece, if it is, for example, an ACT test that they are taking, there is data sharing through, man, what does ACT stand for now? I can't remember.
The college. Oregon College Test used to be company.
Okay. So, but if there's that piece in 215 that says that data sharing is prohibited, then how does that work?
Well, it's prohibited with sharing it with very specific groups, which I think are down on, starts
Yeah.
on line 137. So the student and the parent can still get the school report, which they're the primary audience for, especially for a test like that. Some of the other assessments, we'll use RISE, for example. The state gets the master return file back of all the students who participate, and LEAs get a file back for the students that they tested under their LEA umbrella. So these prohibitions, just I'm like, we just gotta make it really clear to people so nobody gets in trouble inadvertently, because they've got to handle this data a little differently than they do the other.
And I think USHE gets it too.
If the student identifies a college to send their scores to on ECT, you're correct. There are some students that don't fill that out and don't send their score to any universities.
Okay, I'm good with striking written. It just says policies. I don't know how they do that without writing it down, because there's several places they have to do policies. So I guess maybe or maybe it's just excessive. I just think I would just leave it at that, because there's other places they have to do policies. It would seem this would be one policy that they would have. So
We could amend it to procedures.
I think I would leave it policies.
Okay.
I think I would want to know if I were in a district, what that looked like if I were a district myself, but I guess if we get feedback on that, that's not what they want. So
I have a
I would,
comment.
oh yeah, go ahead, and then I'll make a motion.
Well, in just reading through the way this is written, it would be really easy for these like mays to be turned to shalls and you know, down the road it become a requirement that these students participate in state assessments. And I just to me, this is written in such a way that it makes me wonder if that isn't the purpose for doing this in the first place, just to move us incrementally closer to making it a requirement that any state-funded student must, or homeschool student, private school student must participate in these assessments. And I just want to put that out there. So in case down the road that is attempted, that we can say we were thinking about that and we're proactively protecting against that.
I think that's a fair assessment.
Good.
We always be cautious of those shalls and mays. So can I make a motion?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion. The committee approves R 277-604 draft 2 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on second and final reading.
All right, we have a motion. Committee approved 277-604 draft 2 on first reading and forward to the board for approval on what? For final reading,
Yeah. Okay. I don't have that.
whatever that was.
Sorry. Draft 2. Draft
Draft
2 is
two.
the one that has this like, and that just has the one.
Order the board for approval on second and final reading. Any further discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
Thank you. 4 ayes and 1 no vote from board member Klein. So is that all of the work for the agenda today?
It is. Oh my gosh.
Okay. Great. Well, then, thank you very much to
We
everyone.
deserve that. Or somehow I feel like we deserve that.
This meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Great,
you.
great work.
Thank you.
see you soon.
Non-licensed and adjourned.